Alright guys, thought I'd do a thoughts of the week video. I didn't do one last week, apologies. There was a subject I was trying to cover and I did it about 5 times and then gave up because it was quite a complex one. I'll see if I can piggyback it on this today. Try and keep it short. Obviously UK wise, the Boris party things are the gift it keeps giving. Now they're moving from number 10 onto the parties he's allegedly had at his apartment as well. I've got to admit, there's a bit of a surprise Boris lasted this long, which is something a lot of people have said, you know, in interviews and whatever. But it's a sad state of affairs when your choices are better the devil you know or the Labour Party. And this is where I think the UK stuck. Because they go, let's replace him. But what are you replacing him with? The system itself, in my personal opinion, and the fact that we yin and yang between Labour and Conservatives, which toe the party line and are often influenced through things like lobbyists, is not democracy. It's a false democracy as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't represent the population of the United Kingdom. Boris, in the fact that it's just one thing after another, scandal-wise or incompetence, doesn't faze the guy. In fact, he's actually showing what is wrong with the system. Because when you've got somebody that is so incompetent, so in your face, doesn't seem to care, and also seems to think it'll just carry on, and he's probably not far wrong. How weird is that? Even with proportional representation, it's a bit strange, because I agree that you should have proportional representation, but I also think you have to take it from a metric of common sense, because not everybody's aware what is best overall. That's just a bit of common sense in there. I mean, some of the stuff I hear from people, it does make me cringe sometimes about what do you think, what's your thoughts, you know, in the sense of where did you get this thought from? But I think the Boris hamster wheel is going to keep turning at the minute. I don't think there's any real risk, even if we go for another election. You're very likely to get another Conservative government. And it's more to do with the failing of the Labour government than the positivities of the Conservatives, bizarrely. Well, unfortunately. But even then, I think they're as bad as each other. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the Boris things. And I do think this new, COVID's over, we're going to have to live with it, but everything's going back to normal as quick as possible, that's suddenly been rolled out very, very rapidly and seems to have sort of come from nowhere, is get that big broom and throw the parties under the rug, get the focus on positive media, because the British public are this stupid. And I think that's exactly what not Conservatives, politicians believe. Spin doctors prove it on a regular basis with the way they will shove news articles into news stories if there's a bigger picture going on that day, a bigger news article where the focus is on that, because everything is so narrow. If you write down how many news stories that you see during a week, I'm not on about somebody decides to swim the channel. I'm talking about, you know, news in the sense of political news with political effects. You'll see they're very, very narrow. COVID, tick the box. NHS, tick the box. Boris Johnson, conversation of the week. But it's such a narrow narrative. If you look at the truck issues around the Brexit and the ports between France and the UK, didn't see it in the news either. Massive problem there. the focus is so narrow, and it's just it's lazy journalism. Because to be fair, I get bored of listening to things about Boris and whatever, because I don't care about the guy. Unless you're coming up with a better answer, we're stuck with him. But I'm interested on the effects of Brexit and the effects of these new taxes that have sort of come in, because obviously with the UK deciding to remove itself from the EU, you've got all freight forwarding fees and things that have come in, with a lot of people not even being aware that it's occurred. But then on the positive spin, because we do try and spin it in a positive way, Spain, because people, what gets me is that it's the Spanish's fault. They won't let us do this. They won't let us do that. It's not Spain's fault. The UK left the EU, and as a fact, Spain is part of the EU and has to follow the EU guidance. What it's actually doing at the moment, which I expect to see the sort of first visas this year, because I don't think this will be one visa. I think there'll be multiple for different types of digital nomads. There is talk of visas being 500,000 to get in. That visa, I think somebody's merged some visa information from the ones that was done with the Chinese and during the recession to pump Chinese money into the Spanish economy. These the same as if you bought a house or whatever over €500,000, or brought 500,000 in cash or whatever. The Spanish are quite accommodating, but there does seem to be some discussions around 6-month visa, 2-year visa, 1-year visa, with a further 2 as a resident, and there's all these other things that are going on. So I think we're probably going to end up with about 5 different nomad visas. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of people there who are non-EU often ask me, how easy is it to move to Spain? I find the Spanish far more accommodating than this little island I'm sat on that still thinks it's an imperial power. And I say that from a bureaucratic point of view, by the way, in the sense of dealing with embassies, dealing with customs officials, whatever. Little Britain's a little empire still. It's a little rattly nation that still, it's punching above its weight these days. Just doesn't have the resources and finances to maintain where it is. Anyway, that's going to throw a spanner in the works with a few people. But the point being is, Spain accommodating. I suspect you'll get other nations piggybacking on that. There already is other countries that do it, and I'm not going to rattle through it, but you can look for these digital nomad visas. Now, if you're an EU, anyway, you can move in the Schengen zone. If you're an EU and, a lot of people just disappear in Spain. I don't know if that's going to get any easier or worse over time, because at the moment I was hearing somebody got detained after breaching the 90 days. Can't stop in Spain for over 90 days now in a 180-day period if you're a Brit that isn't a resident, because you're not an EU citizen anymore. Cake, eat it. It's gone. So I do think there's Brexit fallout, and a lot of it gets back down to the narrative of the news, and that just seems to be carrying on. They're not talking about this stuff because this stuff actually affects people and may make people rather angry when they realise how much of their rights and stuff have been stripped away by leaving the EU without actually having a government that going out its way to actually make sure we remain integrated, if going for a sovereign state that's run by Boris to give us more choice and more decision making on our little island. Couldn't make this stuff up. So anyway, push Boris aside. Spain, I think, is going to be a bit more open. There's 5G everywhere in Spain. The infrastructure with the internet is extremely good as well. We've got 300 meg in the house, and I think you can get 600 meg easily. Sort of get to the speeds. Well, you can run servers on it. Although I'm sure it's in your contract that you can't, but I'm sure there must be bits in there where you can get a business line as such to run a server on. But I haven't looked into the costs on that, but I'm sure the infrastructure is already there for it. Now the important bit here is Spain is embracing the digital nomad culture. I think it's trying to encourage it more in Spain as well, because you may not be aware, but Spain is a bit fragmented in the sense of, well, like the UK, all the money's in London. Then, you get bits in Birmingham, bits in Leeds, bits in Manchester, but predominantly I think 3/4 of the wealth is in London. The COVID situation may have changed it, but being business backwards the way the UK has been for a long time, in the sense of it's got this obsession with office-based working. Oh, well, I don't know if they're working if they're not sat opposite me. There may be a case of everyone gets dragged back into the office, and from the news articles this week, it looks like that they're trying to encourage it, because, but the delicatessen down the road from the office will go bankrupt. Yes, but you'll actually spend more money in your local area if you don't come into London. Just common sense. It actually spreads the wealth more equally, and that's, if they did it in the UK. Spain, I think, is already sort of tapping into some of that, because they've got villages that are disappearing because everyone's dying because they're getting old. So the point being is, if the wealth is equally spread and the infrastructure's there, it's going to encourage more people to actually live there. Now, I would suspect if this continues, I did mention the half a million visa, but like I said, I think that's got mixed in with the Chinese. But what I think is going to happen is you'll have your people per hour, your freelancer, all the freelance websites and businesses at your client list, that you may have to disclose that you have 12-month contracts, 18-month contracts, regular income for the last 3 years, all that sort of stuff. Then you may not have to get involved in this lump sum business, which is, like I said, the Chinese were doing it to inject money into the economy because they got tax-free benefits and all sorts. With the digital nomads, they're not expecting you to turn up with 500,000, let's be honest. But they are seeing they need the diversity in their economy. And that doesn't mean you have to be gay to get this visa, or you need to be in a wheelchair or from an ethnic background. It's literally they're diversing to create a new business culture, which I think is great. And the other thing is, I've been trying to get things like this going for years. It's very, very hard. I know a few people have moved over. I won't mention their names because I don't know what their relationships are with their companies, whether they still think they're sat in other countries. But the point being is, there is a fair few people doing it, but the more transparent it is and the more recognised it is, the better it would be. So I hope Spain grabs that by the horns and tries and drives it forward. Especially if they put tax incentives in there. That'll be a big one, especially if you say, right, you get zero tax for 5 years if you go up to the Basque Country, because the Basque Country's actually got areas where they are actually giving tax-free incentives for people to move there, hence because they've got this population decline. So keep an eye on that one, guys. What else have I got this week? So we covered that. Oh, NHS. We got, was it 70,000 people protesting or something? So you're being told to double vaccinate, boosters, and yet we've got NHS staff now protesting because they don't want to do it themselves. I do not like this mandate type stuff, because where does it stop? The fact that you're getting information saying, read this up yourself, but from what I've read and interpreted, if you're double vaccinated, you don't need a booster from what I've read, but they do recommend, depending who you speak to, that you get your boosted. But even the NHS radio ads seem to have come down a scale. Like, from initially it was sort of like, well, if you get COVID and don't vaccinate, you could kill somebody type thing. It's that, not in those words, but quite in your face about it. To, well, I was in bed for a week and I couldn't walk up the stairs for a month type thing. So now it's gone from, you need to protect others, which is obviously a message that would have helped to make a lot of people very pro-state, in a way of, if somebody chooses not to have this, you should force them to have it, because they are making you ill, they're putting you at risk. To now, you can make yourself ill if you don't vaccinate. Although it's not really a vaccination if you have to keep boostering it. Because my personal view on all this, I think the latest version, the 101th version, has basically wiped out the Delta variant, or hit it quite hard. But the other bits that don't get mentioned, this is why I do recommend having a look at what actually went on in Africa. Because if we digress it in bigger numbers or occurrence, I think, this is my personal view, some developing nations took the hit because they didn't have the vaccine, which meant their immune systems may, because I cannot confirm this, may have got to herd immunity, and then possibly there's been some migration or something going on with the virus, with this new variant or whatever. Because it all seems a bit bizarre how it's suddenly gone like that. And it's not gone. It's going to be always there now. A bit like the flu and colds and things like that. But it was just very boom. All changing. Which I do wonder if this thing called human immune systems have cut in on a large scale, or it's just that it's run its course. Who knows? We'll get the truth long after we've died. I'm not on about next week and on about of old age. But I'm looking forward to it disappearing. Hopefully they're not going to bring up another variant for the summer. But for me, I think it's important we get out of this loop and just move away from it. I don't think it's going to be productive to actually go into what they've got up to, who got paid what. No, I'm not sponsored. But I think from a me and you type basis, let the propaganda and everything else play with that stuff. It has no positive or negative effect on your life. If they suddenly found that Boris has made an extra 50 million, for example, through PPE and God knows what, you'll probably still walk away with it. Let's be honest. You're better off focus on stuff that you can actually deal with. I suppose the last thing of today, which is the awkward one, is, are people more depressed today? And you wouldn't believe how hard it was to cover this subject. I spent ages on it. When I look at it, I think it's about the interpretation. Because, to be fair to you and me, I don't think my life is as hard as a 10-year-old child working down a coal mine. I don't think my life is as hard as being in the trenches of World War One. I don't think my life is as hard as those that went through World War Two and post World War Two, and going through all the rations and all the hardships with that. I don't think my life is anywhere near as hard as those people that suffered through those things, or the Holocaust, or Chernobyl, or you take your pick. But I do think there is some unhealthy thoughts around, are you ill? Because there's too much focus on telling you you're ill. there's a lot of push on well-being, and now I've seen who brought up suicides this week. It's to do with the suicide, because I think now that the reality is kicking in around COVID, they're trying to find other stuff to talk about. Suicides come up in a conversation with somebody around the suicide rates, but I believe the mortality rate is actually 8% less in the UK during the COVID period. Somebody may or may not want to confirm that, but that's what I was told. Which means that all that stay safe, we're actually 8% less, not actually more. So are we saying it worked well, or the fact that it was a complete waste of time? I'll leave that one to you. But the thing with depression is there's a few people I know do suffer with it, and they actually are quite open about it these days. But it's often a lot of things that affect it, not just a single element. I mean, you do get some single things like, for example, grief, which is obviously grief. That's not depression, but grief can lead to depression. And it's the same as I was talking to, I think it was on one of the last videos I said about being able to snap out of it. I think we talked about suicides before. But not everybody has that mechanism to actually switch off and move out of it. But I do think there's a negative focus on trying to be positive. It's a bit like the injection of equality without equality of output. When you're trying to have more women in your business, when you're having more disabled people, when you're having more ethnic people, because of you're selecting it based on that criteria, not it as in that person. I mean, it is in that function. When you're hiring, you think, right, we've got to have a focus on somebody who's from India, for example. That shouldn't be what the focus should be on. Is, are they good at accounting? And I think this well-being thing's going in the same way, where there's a lot of people being targeted because they're going, right, we know as a business we don't really get too involved in people or whatever, but we've got to be seen as doing something. Now, I haven't read up lately to see if there's any government changes on policies, because diversity and equality often are part policies that are driven by government, and well-being is probably another one, but I haven't read up on it recently. But the point being is, a lot of people don't understand it, because a lot of people lack the ability to engage with a lot of their staff. Don't get me wrong, when I was working on a factory floor, it was much easier to engage with people. But once you're at a certain level in a certain business, you're trying to keep a distance from everybody. You're not trying to engage about your personal life. You're not trying to engage outside of work. You're trying to keep a business distance. And this is the weird thing, because you're going, well, maybe you should discuss their well-being. It doesn't make any sense. And I do think this is going to be expansive, but in the wrong way, because from my perspective, I'm not a healthcare worker. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. And in all honesty, if somebody said to me, I'm feeling depressed or whatever, the first thing I'm going to go is say, recommend you see your doctor. But in the same sentence, I said, but personally, I also don't recommend any medication for it. I recommend understanding what the problem is, but I'm not a psychiatrist. So are people more depressed now? I don't think they are. I think they're more aware of it and often told that there's something wrong with you. Or like I said, there's driven, you must have this, right? You've got to be more engaged with your staff members to make sure they're not depressed, they're not this, they're not that. At the same time, you're sitting there going, God, I've been doing this nearly 30 years. I've never had anybody commit suicide in work. I've never had anybody quit on my team. I don't think I have any issues on my side. And is it they're hiding it? Well, the answer is no. Because if somebody said to me, Matt, I'm having some serious issues here, like I said, I refer them to a doctor. That's not being negative. If someone said, look, I'm having a really hard time at home, like for example, could take a week off because my mother's died or something like that, I wouldn't think twice on it, because I have empathy. It should be a natural thing. If you're having to create forms and flowcharts around it, it's obviously not a natural occurrence for some people. But anyway, so I don't think people are more depressed. I think what's happening is they're being told they're more depressed than people were in the past. But that's going down this route of like the, driving. Have you spoken to? Are they feeling better? Are they? How's your people? All that sort of stuff. And the media's obviously doing a lot, and you're seeing it everywhere now. Well-being seems to be a buzzword that's sort of dropping in everywhere. And then you've got an entire industry built on the back of it. Because prior to all this, we called it personal development, not well-being. It was personal development because you recognise things that maybe traits or issues and try and work your way around. For example, how to win friends and influence people, you'll find online for free. Very useful. But the point being is, we are being driven as if there's something wrong. It's not. And people aren't any worse now than they were before. It's just, I'd say they're more aware now, and then that's been driven that things are worse. But it only happens if you let people drive it in that direction. But now we get on to a shift in culture. Now, when you do social media, and I say social media in the sense of the broader stuff, like whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, it's a very, very fractured environment. For a start, everyone's posting positive stuff on a large scale, excessive. You go onto TikTok or whatever, you look at the excessively expensive cars that people are going as, oh, that's mine type thing, and then it's like, oh, they're at a car show, whatever. But the point is, it's about excessive wealth, excessive personalities, excessive the way they dress, and purely vulgar consumerism at its maximum. And then you've got the other side where if somebody's trying to just do something, it's troll. Negative stuff. And you've got to recognise, if you're feeling more negative, a lot of that will come out of that environment, because it's not like a solid engagement. See, a lot of these videos, I started all this just originally around the Philippines, because when I first went out to the Philippines, the information was very outdated. Everyone seemed to be about 70, and it was very opinionated. So I sort of started all the videos about transferring over to the Philippines and just discussing general topics. And you still get hammered for that, because I tell you what, a lot of the trolling guys absolutely hated being ignored. But the point being is, the environment allows that to occur. Even when people get prosecuted and dragged to court, you often find the people are not only apologetic, they're often very weak individuals that can't even comprehend how they got from there to there. But often it's because they have a voice online. So you've got to look at all this stuff and understand, if you are feeling depressed, what's driving it? Because ultimately, you control what's around you. I've got friends that choose to do nothing with their lives. And I say choose because at the end of the day, if you go, I'm fat, I'm depressed, I'm miserable, you've got to motivate yourself. There's no point in me dragging you around the bloody park for 4 hours every Sunday. If you can't be bothered to do it yourself, no one else can. So you've got to look at what is driving it. Is it because you look out the window, it's grey, it's bleak, I've had to put a ring flash on here just so I can get enough light to do this video. But you know what? At 7, 8 o'clock this morning, I went for a walk in the park. And I go for a walk in the park every day. I'm looking at joining the gym again now, so I can get on the treadmill. It's because, to be fair, around the park it's always muddy on the footpaths because the dogs, a stupid amount of dog walkers. But this area is quite condensed with high occupancy housing, so there's people living on top of each other, which isn't the greatest. So the park's a lot busier than it should be. Not that's a good or a bad thing, but the whole point is you need somebody to make those sandwiches for Marks and Spencer's. But the point is, you've got to understand, a lot of this stuff that gets you into that rut are things around you. And like I said, I don't think any people are more depressed. I think they're getting excessive information. But like I said, my wife, you can tell I've got a dry throat. My life is no way as bad as somebody that worked down a mine. Getting TB or anything like that. That's the way I look at things. Is I don't have the perfect life, but you know what? I'm content with what I've created, where I'm going, and moving forward with it. And that's the key thing, is moving forward. If you're getting stuck in a rut, what is doing it? Is it the fact that you're bored? Because that's another driver, having nothing to do. Do something about it. Join a camera club, a hiking club, walking club, cycling club. Something to get you out that house. With my father, it was the photography club, because that was two nights a week. But he wasn't depressed. But the point being is that got him. He had to be out at certain times twice a week. Other people, it's bingo. I don't recommend that because obviously it's gambling. But I know some people like doing that because that's their thing. But at the same time, gambling's never a good thing unless you're good at winning. And then you'll soon find yourself banned anyway. But the whole key to it is actually getting yourself out of that rut. And I don't think people are more depressed now. I think people are more informed, but often incorrectly informed, in my opinion. I think too many people are trying to tell you there's something wrong with you. And I say this in the broad sense, that, your hair's too short, your teeth don't look right, you're overweight, your skin tone's the wrong tone, whatever it is. But reality is, as an individual, learn to be content on who you are. And I think that's the key to the journey. The rest of it, you can work out. Like I said, for me, I want to go for a walk in the park. It's looking a bit bleak here for me. It's very grey out there, and I'm like, hence I go, right, I'm going to join the gym. I'll go on the treadmill instead, in the dry, headphones on, switch off, because it's a journey back to fitness, which is working quite well at the moment, to be fair. But we'll talk about that once I've got to a point I'm actually in a position to have something serious to talk about on it. But my thoughts of the week is basically just plod on. If you're not happy with something in life, change it. If you're not happy with where you're living, what you're doing, whatever, look to change it. And you only have one life. You don't have to accept where you are today. What you need to do is look for where you want to be tomorrow and head for that. Don't get caught in a rut. Your life will be over quicker than a blink. Start heading towards where you want to be, not where you are. Thanks for watching.